So this is the first part that I'm blanching the bones. Um, so these are the tails, the pigtails, and also the pork ham bones. So these were blanched for 5 minutes in boiling water, and then the water discard. After that, you have you put those bones back into the pot, put fresh water, bring it to boil, and just keep skimming until the darker the scum stop coming out. It has to be boiling in order to take out the impurities. And after that stage, the white impurities would come out like this, and those are umami, and it's totally fine to just leave it there. And this is the chashu, or the pork cheek meat that I'm cooking. Just throw it in the pot, you could cook it for 2 hours, and it gets seasoned later. And while the soup is cooking, I always like to keep the lid on. That way you don't have to crank the heat, and it will be still boiling. Also, it helps not evaporate, like the water not evaporate. And this is after 2 hours, and I'm taking out, oh, the white thing here in the middle is the pigtails that is starting to render, and I'm taking out the cheeks. I've got 6 pieces in there, and I am weighing them because I need to know how much salt I need to apply. So the 6 cheeks, they were a total of 461 grams, which means I'm gonna need 4.6 grams of salt to be sprinkled. So here I have the precision scale. I'm weighing out 4.6 grams. It's 4.5, which is fine. And then some fresh black pepper and the salt that I just weighed gets sprinkled evenly onto the cheek, the braised cheek. So this is when it gets seasoned. Like the cooking part, you just cook it with water until it tenderizes. So flip them, sprinkle salt and black pepper on both sides, and just leave it at room temperature for a couple of minutes until it's not super hot. And back to the soup. At this point, you can start breaking down the bones and fat. That way the fat would render faster, and you'll get the creamy or thick broth sooner. Like the more you mix, the sooner you achieve the texture. Also, you want to make some space because you want to add the chicken carcasses. The chicken carcasses, these are also blanched for 5 minutes before it goes into the soup. So you can do it one shot. Do the pork bones, do the chicken bones, discard the water, and then start with fresh water. Yeah, so all the chicken bones are in. I had some chicken wing tips, so I used those as well. And just keep mixing. The more you mix, the faster it renders, and the faster it emulsifies, the soup emulsifies. You just have to make sure the stock is always boiling. And this is a piece of mackerel bone, smoked mackerel bones that I make. You only need that tiny piece for this whole 5-liter soup. The mackerel bone is, I use a wok in hickory chips to smoke it. Yeah, once the cheeks are cool, just plastic wrap, and you just keep them in the fridge until you need it. Make sure it's airtight. Back to the soup, you can see the mackerel. I am mixing it again. So the total cooking time for the soup was about 5 hours.
Oh.
And yeah, in the beginning there was 3 hours before I put the chicken and the mackerel. And after adding the chicken carcasses, it's 2 hours. And then after that is the vegetables for 20 minutes. So almost like 5.5 hours, not including other prep. So it's a lot of time. So at this point, I'm shaking off the bone marrow that's stuck in the thigh, the ham bones. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that I cracked the ham bones in half with using a hammer, so that you can do this. Or you can just go to the butcher shop and ask them to cut it in half for you. It's a lot easier. And once all the bigger bones have been taken out, you mix it again, stir it. And yeah, so this is the mirepoix, onions, leek, ginger and garlic. Throw them in. So at this point, it's been cooked for 5 hours total. And after this, you cook the vegetables for 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how much vegetable flavor you want. Because ginger can take a long time to bring out the flavor. But you don't want to cook it for too long because you otherwise you'll get like a weird sweetness from the onions, which you don't really want in the ramen soup. And just keep mixing. Like, I love watching this. It's kind of psychedelic. It's just you can do this forever. You make sure it smells good. And so I use the 2 chinois or strainer technique, the mesh one on the bottom and the pinhole one on the top. That way you can catch all the bigger pieces with the first one, and the smaller particles will be caught by the mesh strainer. I'll be sending you this video too. Like, I already uploaded on YouTube, so I just have to share it. But there's no caption or there's no explanation or anything, so that's why I'm here explaining. And yeah, so the first chinois, just empty it like that because you need to strain a little bit more. And that's the end of it. So what I'm doing next here is, like, once it's strained, I put back all these remainders back into the pot, and then I make a second stock out of fresh water and mix it with the initial tonkotsu soup.
So that's because you want to get all the flavors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, this initial soup, the first soup that's being strained right now, is a little bit too thick, and when you mix it with the second stock, it really balances out, because the second stock will be like fully emulsified, like really creamy. And that helps the whole soup bind together. So this is the final product of the first stock, and you start the second stock, which only takes about 10 minutes to do.
Oh,
Because yeah, you just need to put some water enough to cover. It doesn't have to be covered, you just have to less than equal parts with the water. It doesn't really matter. I just want to have like a thick mixture of pork. Because when you put fresh water, you'll get all the flavors more out of the little remainders, which was impossible to do in the first because the liquid was already emulsified and there was no room for it to melt out. So I'm like constantly mixing this thing for about 10 minutes, like boiling. And then when I strain it, the same way, double chinois. Yeah, when there's bigger bones at this point, it's really hard to strain. That's why I pick them up with the tongs before I start straining.
great.
It just makes it a lot easier. Yeah, so this is the mixture of the first stock and the second stock.
Looks really creamy.
Yep, it's creamy, but it's not too not too thick. When you eat it, it's yeah, you just get the flavor, but not extremely greasy, like
Yeah.
well balanced. I like the color too.